Welcome to another episode of When We Heal, the World Heals. I'm Trish Hay, your host. So excited to have my dear friend and sister, Lorissa Brunk, on today. Thank you, Larissa, for being here.
Hi.
So happy to have you. Larissa is a therapist and coach. Those are just a few of the things that she does. We could leave it at that for now. And I asked Larissa to be on here. In fact, she'll be on again, just so you guys know. You're going to love Larissa. But today, specifically, I wanted her to talk about being a therapist and what internal family systems is and how it works.
hmm
So,
Yeah, how did you first hear about internal family systems? Like, what made you want to learn about it?
for me, I learned about it. I think just like with trauma healing, I kept hearing like the trauma doctors talking about it. And so then I was curious, but I never did it when I was in more active therapy, right? I never really did that. So I'm curious to know. I just know like a little bit.
Yeah.
So let me jump back a minute and just ask so we could get to know you a little bit more. And I want to know this as well. Like, first of all, like what made you go into the line of work that you're in?
hmm That's a great question.
What drew you to it?
I was a social work undergrad. I got my bachelor in social work. And because I saw the movie Stuart Little and I wanted to, I remember being like, that he gets adopted, right? By this little family, this little
Yeah,
mouse. And I was like, that's what I want to do. I want to be the people who help kids get adopted. Like, that's what I want to do.
that's awesome.
And so they were like, oh, that's called social work. So I went into social work and I was working at a shelter for women that are homeless, women and children. Back in the day, I worked in the daycare first, and then I moved up to house manager, and then I got my bachelor's, and I finally was a case manager. And I noticed as I was doing case management that I was setting up bank accounts or helping them get their lives organized, but I really wanted to be talking in the classroom. They were talking about codependency healing and like going deeper into patterns and actually doing this work. And I'm like, wait, I want to do that, you know? So, realizing, oh, I need to go and pursue actually becoming a therapist. And then I went on and got my master's in counseling from in Colorado. So I became a therapist. Just wanted to
Oh.
do more, wanted to actually help these women really change kind of from the inside, you know.
Mhm.
And one of the teachers at that shelter was a mentor of mine, and she gave me a book called Inside Out by Larry Crabb, which is this man who taught at Colorado Christian University, which is where I got my master's.
Mhm.
And at the time when I went, he had already moved on. He wasn't a professor there anymore, but that's kind of like what led me to that school was inside out. Like from the inside out is how we can heal and live. And I personally just wanted, to most therapists we go because we have questions about ourselves and about our lives and we want to get better. So that's why I did that. And it definitely was the right path for me, for sure. And as I grew in that, I came upon internal family systems after I was done with that work. I went into school-based therapy and I was worked with children and did play therapy for years and years. And then needed to go to counseling more for myself finally after that. Like now I'm ready to go. And that's when I found internal family systems and it definitely changed my life. I went to like 12-step groups for a really long time to deal with certain symptoms of my codependency or things that were my trauma really, and that was very, very helpful. But I would say internal family systems was one of the biggest life-changing things for me to realize this idea, and I can talk about it more today, but all these parts being welcomed, you know it really transformed
Yeah,
my life.
please explain it because I've heard similar people say that about how it really transformed the internal family systems. It's like I've just heard that so many times, but I just don't quite understand. Like, and I love
Okay.
that I didn't even to hear of that for you, that was like such a
hmm
big impact for you too. And now you're
oh
helping other
yes.
people with it. Like, yeah, what is it? Like for someone that's never even heard of it, like what is an internal family system?
And yeah, the internal family systems model is from Richard Schwartz, and it's been around for probably 30 years, but he created and he, created it himself after working with lots and lots of clients, and basically started encapsulating our inner conflicts, because we have all these inner conflicts, right? You can relate to like a voice kind of in your head, or like a series of thoughts, and he kind of encapsulates them into a part of you. And it gives the ability to cognitively get a little space from our thoughts. Like, it's not me thinking it, it's a part of me thinking it now. So now you're kind of getting this objectivity with your thinking, where you can step back a little bit, and then it kind of evolves from there of labeling these parts into categories. So there's manager category, and that's the parts of us that the cruise ship directors that plan and manage and think and try to control with, managing, like get out the door, whatever it might be. And then there's another kind of part called firefighters. And these are the managers, and the firefighters are both protectors and usually come up once we've been triggered. Firefighters are sort of like our addictions, or the piece that's like, I don't care, I'm just gonna put this fire out. There's a lot of inner family models and they all overlap quite a bit, as far as, if you've done any inner child work, you've got your inner child, your inner teen, and then the critical parent. So it can be similar. And I overlap a lot of the language when I'm with my clients. Um, then there's the wounded inner child, or they call it in internal family systems, they call it the exile. So
Okay.
it's like the pain that we experience at certain ages, we exile it, we push it away, and then comes online a new part that now is protecting this exile, right? So it's like, I don't ever want to feel embarrassed again. So now I'm going to manage and control and fix and people please, or what it might, or, drink and shop and rage, whatever it might be, to protect myself from having to protect this exile from pain. The problem is that the exile stays kind of lost and never actually gets to now be loved, right? So now there's just that chronic pattern of, it never really is enough. The protectors aren't really helping us in the long run
Mhm.
anymore. So the idea too is that there's, within all of that is the true self. The self energy is observing, is watching the parts as a whole. And then we start to integrate and weave into the story the true self, or the loving self, the higher self. And in IFS, they just call it self energy, which I think is really beautiful. Self energy easily flows between the parts. It can talk to a firefighter, it can talk to a manager, it can talk to an exile, and it brings everything back together. And the cool thing too in IFS is these parts can actually heal and then transform and become useful resources. So there's like a healed firefighter and a healed manager, that it's like an ally now that
Oh, that's cool.
flows in and out, right? And a healed inner child.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's
So
really
that's a
beautiful.
crash course, obviously, but it's pretty cool.
That is really cool. So, like, is it something that after you learn it and utilize in therapy for a while, you just automatically start thinking that way? Like, oh, that's this part. You know what I
Yeah,
mean? You just start to recognize,
exactly.
like what's at play, and when you get triggered and you're like, oh,
Yes.
it's that. And then you can, okay.
Yeah, because it's a cool process. What's useful is learning to go inward.
Hmm.
IFS teaches clients how to sit and be like, okay, what's the to again get that little gap between, we've all experienced just our thoughts thinking us.
Hmm.
Well, now it's like, whoa, okay, there's a part. So now there's me and the self, or a part. So you learn to close your eyes, you learn to go in, you learn to say, you envision who might that be. Now I have some clients name all the parts, right? That's Sally, and because or I have, a client who made like little acronyms or, little play on words like Sandy because it's quicksand feeling like, it's all
Okay.
very personal. And in each session they talk about a trailhead, like where's the trailhead, and now we're going to take this trail and kind of like get to know these parts. All the parts are good. um, we just want to understand what they're doing, and then they took on a belief, a false belief, and in IFS they call it a burden.
Hmm.
What was your burden? And then through the process of the session you'll understand the burden and even relieve them of their burden, like, oh, that's not true for me anymore. So you're really transcending false beliefs. You're, you know, um, I'm not sure the word I was going to say, catalyzing it, but that doesn't sound like a word. So you know what I mean. Changing it.
Oh, that like really hit me when you were saying about like there's all parts are good, you know? It's like just that, just hit me like, yeah, like that's really beautiful for people. Can only imagine just to hear that. Like, is that really transform people that have like shame and think bad about themselves when they realize what's the mechanism of what's going on, why this thought is coming in, or whatever the action, like you said, the addiction or whatever that we as
Right.
society have said, oh, that's a bad part of me or something. A lot of
Yes.
times.
I think that's what's accessible about this kind of therapy is everybody has probably said that at some time in their life. Well, part of me feels this, part of me wants to go to this party tonight and part of me doesn't. So there's already a natural inclination to understanding that there can be different parts in us that maybe are at odds with each other
Yeah.
and have different motivations and different reasons and different needs. And it's like the self energy is being called on to be the ringleader of all these parts and try to find the win-win for everyone in here, so to speak. Um, I tell my clients, it is a metaphor too. There's not actual like divisions within you or parts within you per se. It's really just a cognitive tool that helps us identify all the different various values, needs. Something that happens in dysfunctional families is, needs, the universal human needs. There's like a list of those, right? So trust, intimacy, cooperation, safety, play, it goes on. And what happens in dysfunctional families or in trauma is those needs become hierarchical. And it's almost like some of them, if I can't get those met, I have to only get these met, right? These are the ones allowed, these are the ones not allowed. And in all therapy, we're really trying to level that back out, like all needs met. And so the parts tend to represent the hierarchy of those, you know, and the inner child gets exiled. And so all of those inner child needs tend to be bound by shame, blocked by shame. And that's where toxic shame comes in. You mentioned that already. You're not allowed to have that. You're not allowed to ask for help.
Yeah.
You may be hearing that voice, like that part saying, what is wrong with you? How dare you want that? But it's representing a need that's being blocked. And the exile is the part of you that first took on that belief. It's not okay to ask for help because help at that time in your life was either not available or you maybe asked for it and yeah, you were shamed or told, do it yourself.
Hmm.
So it's basically just how we learn to categorize our needs. And I think what's cool about IFS is we can experience, and for the first time, I was experiencing getting all my needs met from or I'm sorry, self energy. It matches source a lot. Like, I didn't have to change anything or do anything different. I could experience this blissful, all needs met feeling from within myself, like that you hear people talk about, but it feels elusive for a lot of us who have had trauma, I think.
Um, that's amazing.
Mhm. It's really
I'm,
beautiful.
I'm just curious, is this something that they do with children too, with kids, or is this mostly an adult modality?
I really don't know a lot about how they
Okay.
use it with kids, but I think you can teach it to kids.
Oh, okay.
I've done that with my kids, you know.
Yeah.
Mostly I do inner child work with my kids. Like, here's a stuffed animal. This is baby you. What do you want to say to baby you? What does baby you want? Right? Like the true needs, the true, like, oh, well, I really want to play basketball on the recess, but my other friends don't want to, so I shouldn't. And it's, you can learn to like be true to that little child inside, stuff
Oh,
like that. So yeah, I've definitely taught some of it to my kids. Part
I
of you feels that way, part of you feels that way.
yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah, if kids can learn that, it's beautiful. Like you said,
Hmm.
it if there's in a situation that a parent is interested, I would love, like if my children were younger, I would love to know about that. So that's why I was curious about it. It
That's
sounds
such a good
like a lot
idea.
of people might just come to it as adult because unfortunately their family system had trauma and dysfunction, likely not a parent who would maybe share that, but
Mm.
I don't
Yeah,
know.
that's a really good idea to look into that,
Yeah,
teaching that to parents to
yeah,
teach their kids. I'm sure they're using it. Like, I just
yeah,
don't know.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, well, what kind of client is your ideal client? If you could say, it sounds like internal family systems is could be used for anybody, but like,
Hmm.
is there like a favorite? I don't want to say favorite, but you know what I mean? Is there like a specific thing that you see it works best for in a certain scenario,
Oh,
or just the clientele you love to work with the most? I don't know, anything like that.
yeah. I mean, a lot of my clients are overthinkers and really hard on themselves, critical of themselves. Um, and well, so we call that, you know, the inner critic part, and learning to have compassion for ourselves instead of criticizing ourselves is a really big piece. And I do think that often comes from childhood post-traumatic stress disorder, from dysfunctional families where I don't even love to call it that, but just where they're just emotionally immature or don't have emotional tools to learn. People who, most of it, they weren't able to learn how to love us. They thought they already knew.
Right.
And it was just like one size fits all, maybe.
Yeah.
And this is the right way to do it. It's not about learning what you actually need.
Hmm.
Um, so I would say people who grew up in really maybe strict religious backgrounds or upbringings, um, that was imposed upon us. So we, learn to push down certain needs and elevate others. People with toxic shame symptoms. So that's a similar, uh, that's more of a symptom, I suppose. And then, yeah, overthinking, toxic shame, lots of inner criticism. People who maybe there's alcoholic parents. Um, but a lot of my clients, it was more, there's a lot of religious control in a lot of my clients. And I find that really common.
Oh, yeah.
Hmm.
That makes sense.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Hmm. And that was my story too. Like, well-meaning people who, yeah, inadvertently squash you. But there can be other kinds of trauma too in childhood, just yeah, from divorce or domestic violence or fighting or um, all that. All the run-of-the-mill stuff can result in us just not really caring how we feel or knowing how to get our needs met emotionally. So I find IFS useful for all of that. And I go back and forth between using this model and just reparenting my inner child. They're very tandem for me.
Hmm.
Hmm.
I can see that. Like if I just only know about the inner child because I parent myself all the time now still, but like so loving and kind. I had that like inner critic, I'd say before, but now I'm like, I'm the sweetest parent to myself now.
Yeah. Oh, that's
But that it
cool.
was like a path, that was a path, but like that that is a life changer.
It's
When you
a really big deal.
have this like sweet voice talking to you and having compassion. And I mean,
Mm.
that's what I want everybody to have, ultimately our
Mhm.
own, like you're saying, like our inner source, our self, us having the power to be able to heal and learn so that we can like know that, be like, you're
Mm.
okay.
Ooh, that's the perfect words. You're okay. I remember doing IFS for myself and having that experience that there was something inside of me that was unharmed all
Mm,
along, and that it was actually bigger and more powerful than the parts that had been wounded. That was a really cool experience from IFS. That self was there the whole time and was untouched, unscathed, really,
I love it.
by some of the dark stuff that I went through. Like self energy was there, like, yeah, I'm, and it rises above all of it.
That's
Do you know what I
awesome.
mean?
Yeah, I love that. That's like really empowering, and that there is a part of not parts. I'm not gonna, I feel like now I don't want to say the word part, like I
Yeah,
what I'm talking about. But yeah, but like you're saying
the
that
energy.
that we
Mhm.
have that energy, that source, that we are that source that like always can't be touched within us. So this is another tool for removing and feeling. And yeah, I'm so excited that you shared it, because a lot of when I started this podcast was like, I wanted people to have access so they could learn tools and then they could decide, oh, maybe that's something that will help
Mhm.
me, right? Because there's so many different ways on the path, and like I use so many different things. I didn't really learn this system, right? But I know I just want people to have all those tools, and then they can see like, oh, that seems like the right path for me. Like, and then they
Okay,
know to find like a therapist. So like, if they
absolutely.
wanted to work with you,
Mhm.
then I mean, I'll put link all your info on here, of course. Of course.
Absolutely. No, I love that. People, I think it's important that you find a modality that resonates with you and a therapist that you feel is genuine and understands you. And I like IFS. It's not as threatening, because it's not like I'm a bad person doing this weird thing. It's this part of me, and
Yeah.
it's a little less confrontational. Um, and some parts can be a little angry or scary, or like the firefighters are kind of known for, you know, more grandiose expressions or reactivity, I
Mhm.
suppose. But still, it's nice to know we can we can have a conversation with them. We can start a dialogue between ourselves and our parts. And it also helps with relationships because you can realize, okay, someone else has this part coming up.
Oh, I could see exactly what you're saying with that. Wow.
We can get curious, like,
Like with maybe with like a romantic partner, or I guess with anyone, but if
yeah.
they're getting angry, you could see that's a part coming out, and then maybe
Hmm.
explore it. But yeah.
Yeah, not that our partners usually want us to be their
Well, they'd
in the
have to do the
moment.
work themselves, but you can, I don't know. I
Yeah, it's just
for
more
me, if I
compassion.
could maybe be, yeah, more removed and have some compassion, that like you said, they have to do the work if they want to even recognize that. But if to me to be help me to be a little more removed, if I just know like, oh, like a lot of times when I encounter people in life, then I look at it like, oh, like their inner child's triggered, is how I usually feel if someone's acting a certain
Yeah,
way, then it's like, oh, so I think that's just like another layer also for seeing other people, that most people are doing their very best they can.
exactly.
They are
And there's a good
reacting.
reason they have
Yeah.
that trigger, and then those protectors come out to to protect that triggered inner child. You
Mm.
know, it's like there's the layers. And in the therapy, we work to help those protectors. Like, it's really cool. You talk to them and say, if you would it be okay if self energy comes in now, and you can watch how self energy interacts with the triggered inner child. So you get to take a break and you get to relax. And a lot of times these protector parts are, we can sometimes even ask, not that it matters, but like, how old are you? Or how old do you think we are? And they're little. They're just as little, you know?
Mhm.
So it's all triggered inner children with their various methods, and having the ability to bring home these parts and integrate them. And it changes your brain, because when you have trauma, you know, it ostracizes the memories of that. It kind of creates almost like an island in your brain. And this is very rudimentary, but in essence, it cuts off information there, because what wires together in your brain fires together in your brain. So it's trying to not, you know, connect to that. But they've seen with IFS is like little bridges get built out to these islands of like, guess what? That's done. That's over. We're in, you know, the present now. And you and I both know, you know, with our spiritual work, how important it is to be able to be present in the now. But so
Yeah.
many of us are just living in our heads with all these parts, throwing up movies in our minds all the time. Meditating does help. You know, spiritual practices are, I recommend very highly for our brains. And why not also have the like powerful transformation of, you know, a memory where you see yourself there and you're curled up and your parents are fighting and you're so scared. And instead of hating that child, like, why did you stop putting your hands over ears? Like, you can love them and say, hey, there you are. I need you. You did so good. You did it. It's you got through that. You did the right thing, right? Like, a lot of times the exiled parts think that they're bad, that they did something wrong. And so we get to say, no, and I actually really need you, because you're like one of the coolest parts of me, right? I need you to come and like live my life with me now.
Oh, that's so beautiful.
Yeah, it's really good. It's really cool.
You got me crying just now, like that's so beautiful.
I mean, it's just remarkable what happens when we integrate,
Yeah. Yeah.
right?
Oh, thank you for
Mhm.
sharing about that. Like that's I understand it so much more now, and I'm sure
Okay,
whoever listens to this, they're gonna know is that
good.
something that they, if it's for them, and gonna put your social on here and your website and everything too for people to come and work.
Well, we should do a little. We should do a part with you. That'd be fun. Maybe next time.
Yes, that makes me
Yes,
feel
if you
bad
want
because I've
to,
never
if
done
you want
it.
to, we
I've
can do
never done
one.
that. Yeah. Well, and I'm
That'd
gonna
be
link
cool.
on here. We're gonna do. We have our meditation on the 25th too, so I'll link on here
Mhm.
if anybody wants to join us just for meditation and different stuff too. But yeah, that's totally possible that we do that too. Definitely.
Yeah, we can do a little sample. I
And I
can,
can, yeah, I could see what that's like.
and we've kind of done that before, remember, on our road trip.
Live, free therapy.
Yeah, like pick a topic that's not too vulnerable. And I'll say too, just like anyone who is listening, like to work with Trish, you know, it you have your methods and your experience are of transformation are so powerful. Like, you're such a miracle, and you work miracles in other people's lives. And I do hope that you get some,
Oh,
whoever does choose to work with you, your clients are going to get a lot of good stuff from you.
oh, thank you for,
Yeah.
and same with whoever works with you, because I know what a blessing it is also to be around you and work with you. And so
Thank you.
for coming on and
You're welcome. Thanks for having me.
yeah, to be continued
To be continued.
another
Okay.
day
May
and
all your parts be happy today and loved.
yes. Oh, yours too. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.